My 12-year-old autistic son was playing in our front yard on a nice sunny day. He was drawing fun pictures with chalk on the driveway. He was humming a little song. Everything was quiet and happy. Then Karen from the HOA came walking fast. She had a metal clipboard and looked very angry. She started yelling about no chalk allowed and breaking the rules. My son looked up. He was scared and said in a small voice, "I'm sorry, I will stop." This made her even more mad. She walked right up to him and hit him hard with the heavy metal clipboard. It hit his back and arm. He cried out in pain and fell down. He started crying and rocking. Tears ran down his face. He called Dad. "It hurts a lot." Karen stood there with her arms crossed. She looked happy, like she won. She did not know that the man running was the police chief and her father. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're watching from. And please hit subscribe for more stories where the good guys always win. My 12-year-old autistic son was sitting on the driveway in front of our house, legs folded beneath him, completely absorbed in his world. A small plastic bucket of chalk rested beside him, tipped over slightly, bright sticks scattered within easy reach. He was drawing carefully, not rushing, not scribbling. A sun with long rays stretched across the concrete. A house stood beneath it, slightly crooked, with a big door and a heart floating above the roof. Little stick figures stood in a line, holding hands. As he drew, he hummed, a soft, repetitive tune, the same one he always hummed when he felt calm, when the world felt manageable, when his thoughts weren't racing or colliding with too much noise. I stood a few steps away, pretending to be busy, but really just watching him. Moments like this mattered. My son doesn't always feel safe outside. Sudden sounds overwhelm him. Loud voices confuse him. Unexpected confrontations can send him spiraling into panic before he has time to understand what's happening. But on this day, in this moment, he was relaxed, grounded, happy. The chalk made a faint scratching sound against the driveway. His humming filled the quiet. Everything felt right. Then footsteps broke the calm, fast, sharp, purposeful. I looked up just as a woman came striding down the sidewalk toward us. Karen. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her. She walked like she was always late for a confrontation, her shoulders tense, her jaw clenched. In her hand was a metal clipboard, heavy and solid, catching the sunlight with each step. Papers clipped tightly beneath it fluttered slightly in the breeze. Her expression was already angry before she even reached us. She didn't greet us, didn't slow down. She stopped abruptly at the edge of the driveway and raised her voice immediately. "No chalk allowed." The sound cut through the air like a slap. My son flinched. "HOA rules clearly state no markings on driveways," she continued. "This is a violation." My son's humming stopped mid-note. He froze, chalk still in his hand, his body stiffening as his brain tried to process the sudden noise and anger directed at him. Slowly, he looked up at her. His eyes were wide, confused, scared. He started, then stopped. His mouth opened and closed once as he searched for the right words. "I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice quiet and shaky. "I will stop." He wasn't arguing. He wasn't defiant. He was apologizing. He bent forward quickly, trying to gather the chalk, his movements rushed and clumsy now. The sun he had drawn smeared under his sleeve, a heart blurred into streaks of color. "I didn't know," he added softly. "I'll clean it. That should have ended." Any reasonable adult would have stopped there. But Karen's face twisted with something darker than anger. Her eyes narrowed, her grip on the clipboard tightened. She stepped closer. Too close. "Sorry isn't enough," she snapped. "You kids think you can do whatever you want." My stomach dropped. I took a step forward, ready to intervene, to explain, to put an end to this before it went any further. "Okay," I said firmly. "That's enough. He's a child." Karen didn't even look at me. Instead, she focused entirely on my son, looming over him, her shadow falling across the chalk drawings. The metal clipboard hung at her side, heavy and unmoving. My son's breathing quickened. I could see the panic building in him, the subtle rocking of his body, the way his fingers curled and uncurled, the way his eyes darted between her face and the ground. "I'm sorry," he said again, quieter this time. "Please." The word "please" barely made it out. Something inside Karen seemed to snap. She lifted the clipboard. Time slowed. I remember the way the sunlight flashed off the metal, the way my son's eyes widened in sudden, pure fear, the way my voice rose as I shouted his name. But I was too far. The clipboard came down hard, striking his back and arm. The sound was awful. My son cried out and fell forward onto the driveway, the chalk scattering across the concrete in every direction. His body curled inward instantly, arms pulling tight against himself as he hit the ground. He started rocking. Hard. Fast. Tears poured down his face as he cried out, his voice breaking. "Dad, it hurts a lot." Those words tore through me. I ran. I dropped to my knees beside him, pulling him into my arms, shielding his body with mine. His whole frame was shaking, his breaths coming in uneven gasps as he clutched at my shirt. "I'm here," I said, my voice shaking. "I've got you. You're okay." But he wasn't okay, and neither was the world around us. I looked up. Karen stood a few feet away, arms crossed, the clipboard now hanging loosely at her side. She was smiling, not nervously, not awkwardly, satisfied, like she had accomplished something, like she had proven a point. Neighbors were starting to step out of their houses now. Doors opened, voices murmured. Someone gasped, someone else raised a phone. Karen didn't notice, or didn't care. She had no idea what she had just set into motion. And she had no idea that the man running toward us, moving fast and without hesitation, was about to change everything. Because he wasn't just a bystander. He was the police chief, and he was her father. I don't remember deciding to move. My body reacted before my mind caught up, before reason or fear or disbelief could slow me down. One moment I was standing there, frozen by what I had just seen, and the next I was running toward my son as fast as my legs could carry me. The world felt too loud and too quiet at the same time. My son was on the ground, curled inward, rocking hard against the concrete. His cries weren't steady. They came out in broken sounds, sharp with pain and panic. His hands were pulled tight against his chest, fingers clenched like he was trying to hold himself together. "Dad, Dad," he cried. "It hurts. It hurts a lot." I dropped to my knees beside him, the concrete scraping against my skin, and pulled him into my arms. "I'm here," I said immediately, my voice shaking despite my effort to keep it calm. "I'm right here. You're safe. I've got you." He clutched my shirt with both hands, his grip desperate, like he was afraid I might disappear if he let go. His breathing was fast and uneven, each inhale catching in his chest before spilling out in a sob. I pressed my forehead gently against his hair. "It's okay," I said, even though nothing about this was okay. "You didn't do anything wrong. You hear me? Nothing." Shook his head back and forth, still rocking. "I said sorry," he cried. "I said I would stop." Those words broke something inside me. I pulled back just enough to look at him, to check him quickly. His arm was red, his back hurt. I could see the pain in his face, but worse than that was the fear. The deep, overwhelming terror that had taken hold of him, the kind that doesn't fade quickly, the kind that lingers long after bruises heal. Behind me, voices began to rise. What the hell was that? Did she just hit him? Is that kid okay? I didn't turn around yet. I couldn't. My focus stayed on my son, on slowing his breathing, on grounding him the way I'd learned to, over the years. "Look at me," I said softly. "Just look at me." It took a moment, but eventually his eyes met mine. They were wide, glassy, filled with tears and confusion. "You're safe, no," I said. "I won't let her hurt you again." He nodded faintly, though his body still trembled. That's when I heard her voice again, cold, sharp, unbothered. "He was breaking the rules," Karen said. I turned slowly. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed, the metal clipboard hanging loosely from one hand. Her posture was relaxed now, almost casual, like the situation was already over in her mind. "Rules?" I said, my voice low. "You just hit my child." She scoffed. "I corrected him," she replied. "If parents don't teach their kids to follow rules, someone has to." My hands tightened instinctively around my son. "He's autistic," I said. "He was drawing with chalk." She rolled her eyes. "That's not my problem." Those words echoed louder than any shout. Around us, more neighbors had gathered. People stood at the edges of their driveways, some stepping closer, others frozen in place. A few held phones up openly now, recording. Someone shouted, You assaulted him. Another voice said, What kind of person does that? Karen's expression hardened. Everyone needs to calm down, she snapped. I'm enforcing HOA policy. My son flinched at her raised voice and buried his face against my chest. Make her stop talking, he whispered. I held him tighter. You don't get to talk to him anymore, I said firmly. You don't get to be near him. She took a step forward. I stood up immediately, positioning myself fully between her and my son. Don't, I warned. For the first time, she hesitated. Not because she felt regret, but because she realized the situation wasn't under her control anymore. Someone in the crowd yelled, I already called the police. That got her attention. Her posture shifted slightly. Her shoulders straightened. The confidence in her expression wavered for just a moment before she forced it back into place. Good, she said. They'll clear this up. I looked down my son. His rocking had slowed, but his hands were still shaking. His breathing was uneven, like his body didn't trust the world enough yet to relax. I'm scared, he said quietly. I know, I replied. I know. I sat back down beside him, refusing to take my eyes off her, refusing to let my body move far enough away that she might see an opening. The minutes that followed felt stretched thin. Too long. Too heavy. Sirens finally cut through the tension, distant at first, then growing louder as they approached. The sound made Karen stiffen. Police cars pulled up along the curb. Doors opened. Officers stepped out, calm but alert, eyes scanning the scene quickly. One of them walked straight toward us and crouched down. Hey there, he said gently to my son. Are you hurt? My son looked at me before answering. She hit me, he said softly. It scared me. The officer nodded, his expression serious, and began taking notes. Another officer spoke to witnesses. Several neighbors spoke at once. She swung the clipboard. He was crying before she even stopped yelling. She didn't try to help him at all. Karen tried to interrupt. That's not how it happened, she snapped. They're exaggerating. The officer held up a hand. Ma'am, you'll have your turn. Her jaw tightened. I could see it then, the realization creeping in. This wasn't a misunderstanding that would blow over. This wasn't a situation she could intimidate her way out of. The officer turned back to me. Sir, are you his father? Yes. And he's autistic? Yes. The officer nodded once. I'm sorry this happened, he said quietly. Karen laughed sharply. Oh, please, she said. You're acting like I committed a crime. The officer stood up slowly and looked directly at her. You struck a minor with an object, he said. That is a crime. The crowd went silent. Karen's face changed, not anger, fear. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. That was when the sound of running footsteps approached fast from down the street, not panicked, purposeful. A man pushed through the crowd, his face pale, his eyes locked on the scene in front of him. He took in everything in seconds. My son on the ground, the chalk smeared across the driveway, the clipboard, the officers. His gaze landed on Karen. Karen, he said sharply. Her head snapped toward him. Dad? The air shifted. The man pulled out his badge and held it up calmly. I'm the police chief, he said, and you need to step back. Now. Karen's confidence collapsed completely. The clipboard slipped from her hand and hit the concrete with a hollow clang. My son squeezed my arm. Dad, who is that? I looked down at him. That's someone who's going to make sure this stops, I said, for the first time since the clipboard came down, since the world broke open around us. I felt something new enter the moment. Not relief, not yet, but certainty. This wasn't going to be ignored, and she was no longer in control. The street no longer felt like our neighborhood. It felt like a stage where something irreversible had already happened, and everyone was slowly realizing they were standing inside it. My son stayed close to me, pressed against my side, his fingers curled tightly into my shirt. His breathing had slowed a little, but every sharp sound still made him flinch. A car door closing too loudly, someone clearing their throat, the murmur of voices rising and falling around us. He kept his eyes down. I could feel his heart racing through his small frame. Around us, people had gathered in a loose circle, neighbors I recognized, others I barely knew beyond a wave or nod, Some stood frozen, stunned by what they'd seen. Others whispered angrily to one another, disbelief and outrage mixing in low voices. That was a child, she actually high. Him. What kind of person does that? Phones were visible now. No one tried to hide them. This wasn't gossip. This was evidence. Karen stood a short distance away, rigid and defensive, her arms crossed again like armor. She stared straight ahead, refusing to look at my son, refusing to look at me. The metal clipboard was still in her hand, though she no longer seemed aware of it. She looked irritated, not ashamed, not concerned. I watched her carefully. People who feel guilt tend to avoid attention. People who feel entitled brace for confrontation. She was bracing. Sirens grew louder. My son noticed them before I did. "Dad," he whispered, his voice tight. "What's that noise?" "That's the police," I said calmly. "They're coming to help." He didn't relax, but he nodded. The first patrol car pulled up at the curb, lights flashing but no siren now. Then another. Doors opened. Officers stepped out, their movements measured and controlled. They scanned the scene quickly, reading the tension in the crowd, the fear in my son's posture, the defiance in Karen's stance. One officer approached us immediately and knelt down so he was at eye level with my son. "Hey there," he said gently. "I'm Officer Ramirez. Can you tell me your name?" My son looked at me first. I nodded. "It's okay." He swallowed. I'm Alex." Officer Ramirez nodded, his expression kind and serious at the same time. "Alex, are you hurt?" My son hesitated. "She hit me," he said quietly. "It scared me." The officer didn't rush him, didn't interrupt. "Where did she hit you?" he asked. My son lifted his arm slightly, wincing. Officer Ramirez glanced at me, then made a note. "You did nothing wrong," he said to my son. "Okay? You're not in trouble." That mattered more than he probably realized. My son's shoulders dropped just a little. Behind us, other officers were speaking with witnesses, several neighbors, DI. "Didn't wait to be asked." She yelled first. He apologized. She swung the clipboard. She didn't stop when he cried. Karen finally turned toward them. "You're all exaggerating," she snapped. "I was enforcing rules. That's my job." An officer looked at her evenly. "Ma'am, HOA rules don't authorize physical force," she scoffed. I barely touched him. The crowd reacted immediately. "That's a lie. We saw it. He fell." Karen's voice grew sharper. "This is ridiculous. He shouldn't have been doing that in the first place." I felt my jaw tighten. Officer Ramirez stood up slowly and turned toward her. "Ma'am," he said, calm but firm, "you are being accused of striking a minor. You need to lower your voice." She opened her mouth to argue. Then footsteps came running down the street. Fast, heavy, urgent, not panicked, purposeful. People turned instinctively toward the sound. A man pushed through the gathering crowd, his expression pale but controlled, his eyes scanning the scene with precision. He took in everything in seconds. The chalk drawings smeared across the driveway, my son standing close to me, the clipboard, the officers, Karen. Then his eyes locked onto her. Karen. The way he said her name cut through the noise instantly. Her posture changed. She turned, confusion flashing across her face for half a second before recognition hit. "Dad?" The word came out small, uncertain. The man reached into his jacket and pulled out a badge. "I'm the police chief," he said clearly, holding it where everyone could see, "and you need to put the clipboard down." "Now." The silence that followed was heavy. Karen's hand loosened. The clipboard slipped from her fingers and hit the pavement with a dull clang. For the first time since she'd arrived, she looked afraid. The police chief didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. "What happened here?" he asked. An officer began explaining. Witnesses added details. Phones continued recording. Karen tried to speak. "Dad, they're making it sound worse than it was." He held up a hand. "No," he said. "You don't interrupt." She stopped. He turned toward my son and crouched slightly. "Son," he said gently, "can you tell me what happened?" My son's fingers tightened around my hand. "She yelled," he said. "I said sorry." Then she hit me. The police chief closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, something had changed. He stood up slowly and turned back to Karen. "You struck a child," he said. "A disabled child. I was enforcing." "You were abusing authority," he said flatly. "And you're done." Karen's face drained of color. The officers moved closer. My son leaned into me and whispered, "Dad, is it over?" I squeezed his hand. "It's stopping," I said. "That's what matters." The police chief nodded to one of the officers. "Proceed." And just like that, the power Karen had clung to vanished. The street felt different, awake, watching, and no longer willing to look the other way. Authority doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, stands still, and waits for the truth to finish speaking. That's what happened on our driveway. The police chief stood just a few steps from Karen, his posture steady, his expression controlled. He didn't need to raise his voice or assert dominance. The badge in his hand did that for him. The uniformed officers nearby did that for him. And the crowd, silent, watchful, did the rest. Karen looked small now, not physically, but in the way people do when they suddenly realize the rules they've been hiding behind no longer protect them. Her arms were no longer crossed, her shoulders sagged slightly, like the weight of what she'd done was finally pressing down on her. "This is being blown out of proportion," she said, forcing a laugh that didn't land. "He fell. Kids fall all the time." No one responded. The police chief turned his head slowly and looked at her, not as her father, not as a neighbor, but as a law enforcement officer, evaluating a situation that had crossed a clear line. "You struck him," he said. "With an object." "I didn't," she started. He raised a hand. "Stop," he said quietly. "She did." That alone told everyone everything they needed to know. An officer stepped closer, holding a small notepad. "Ma'am," the officer said, "for clarity, did you strike the child with the clipboard?" Karen hesitated. The pause stretched longer than it should have. "I was trying to get his attention," she said finally. The officer wrote something down. Another officer spoke up. "Multiple witnesses observed you swinging the clipboard." Phones lifted slightly higher. Karen's face flushed. "You taught me to follow rules," she snapped, turning toward the police chief. "You always said order matters." He nodded once. "Yes," he said. "I also taught you that power comes with responsibility." She opened her mouth again, but this time the words didn't come. The police chief turned to me. "Sir," he said, "can you stand with your son for a moment?" I nodded and gently guided my son a few steps away, keeping him close. He leaned into me, his body still tense, his eyes darting between faces. "What's happening?" he whispered. I crouched slightly so we were eye level. "The adults are handling it," I said calmly. "You're not in trouble." That mattered to him. I could see it in the way his shoulders lowered just a fraction, in the way his breathing slowed enough that it no longer sounded panicked. Behind us, the police chief continued. "Karen," he said, his voice steady, "you're being relieved of any authority you believe you have here. Effective immediately." Her head snapped up. "You can't do that," she said. "This is HOA business." He didn't act emotionally. "This is criminal behavior," he replied. "HOA rules don't override the law." An officer stepped forward. "Ma'am," the officer said, "at this time, you are being detained pending investigation for assault on a minor." The word detained hung in the air. Karen stared at the officer, then at her father. "You're serious?" she asked, disbelief cracking through her voice. "Yes," he said, "I am." For a moment, it looked like she might argue again. Then she looked around. No one met her eyes. The neighbors she'd intimidated for years stood quietly, arms crossed, faces hard. No one spoke in her defense. No one tried to minimize what had happened. The officer gestured gently. "Please turn around." Karen hesitated. That hesitation wasn't about confusion. It was about pride. Slowly, reluctantly, she turned. The sound of the handcuffs clicking into place was soft, but final. My son stiffened at the noise. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay," I whispered. "That sound just means she can't hurt anyone right now." He nodded, though his eyes stayed fixed on the scene. Karen was guided a few steps away, her posture rigid, her face pale. "This is a mistake," she muttered. I was just doing my job. The police chief shook his head. No, he said. You abused your position. And you hurt a child. She didn't respond. The officers escorted her toward the patrol car. The crowd parted without a word. No one shouted. No one clapped. There was no celebration, just a shared understanding that something serious had happened and that it was being taken seriously. An officer returned to us. Sir, he said to me, we're going to have medical take a look at your son, just to be safe. That's fine, I replied. He knelt again, lowering himself to my son's level. You did really well, he said gently. You told the truth. That helps a lot. My son blinked. I did? He asked. Ye. The officer said. That takes courage. My son considered that quietly. The police chief approached us one last time. I am deeply sorry, he said to me. This should never have happened. I looked at him, not with anger, not with relief, but with exhaustion. What matters, I said, is that it stops. He nodded. It will. The ambulance arrived quietly. The EMTs were calm, respectful, careful not to overwhelm my son. They checked his arm, his back, spoke softly, explained every step. You're safe, one of them said. We're just making sure you're okay. My son nodded and let them work. As they finished, the police chief looked down the street. The crowd was dispersing now. People returned to their homes slowly, thoughtfully, like they'd just witnessed something that would stay with them for a long time. The power that had once felt one-sided was gone, replaced by accountability. As Karen was placed into the patrol car, she finally looked back at us, not with anger, not with pride, but with something closer to realization. The door closed. The street felt quieter than it had before, not because nothing had happened, but because something had finally been addressed. And for the first time since the clipboard came down, since fear had taken over my son's small body, I felt something settle into place. The power had shifted, and it wasn't shifting back. Consequences don't arrive all at once. They come in layers. Some are immediate and visible. Others take time, unfolding slowly as the shock fades and reality settles in. What happened on our driveway didn't end when the patrol car door closed. That was only the beginning of what came next. The street was still again, but not the same kind of stillness as before. This quiet carried weight. My son sat beside me on the edge of the driveway, wrapped in a light blanket one of the neighbors had brought out. The EMTs had shed checking him. No broken bones, no serious injuries, bruising, soreness, shock. They spoke gently, explained every step before touching him, waited when he needed a moment. You did great, one of them told him. He nodded, still processing everything. He kept glancing toward the patrol car parked at the curb. The one Karen now sat inside. He didn't ask questions yet. He just watched, his face serious, thoughtful in a way children shouldn't have to be. An officer approached me with a clipboard. Not metal, not threatening, just a thin plastic one with forms attached. I need to get a statement from you, he said calmly. Of course, I replied. We stepped a few feet away, though I stayed close enough that my son could still see me. The officer asked me to recount everything from the beginning. I spoke slowly, carefully, making sure every detail was clear. My son drawing, the yelling, the apology, the strike. The officer listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, writing everything down. And your son is autistic, he asked. Yes, he wrote that down too. That's important, he said. It matters. Nearby, other officers spoke with neighbors. I could hear fragments of their statements drifting over. She was yelling before she even stopped. He said he was sorry. She didn't hesitate. One by one, witnesses confirmed the same story. Karen remained in the patrol car, visible through the window. She stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, arms rigid at her sides. She didn't look at anyone now. The police chief stood a short distance away, speaking quietly with another officer. He looked older than he had when he first arrived. The weight of the situation showed in the lines of his face, in the way his shoulders slumped slightly when he thought no one was watching. This wasn't just a professional failure for him, it was personal. Eventually he approached me. "Want you to know," he said, keeping his voice low. "This will not be swept aside. There will be an internal review. There will be charges, and she will not be protected." I studied his face, searching for excuses, For hesitation, I found none. What matters most, I said, is that my son feels safe again. He nodded slowly. I understand, my son called out softly. Dad? I turned immediately and went back to him. Yes? Is she in trouble? He asked. I crouched so we were eye level. She made a very bad choice, I said carefully. And when adults make bad choices that hurt people, there are consequences. He thought about that. Like when I break a rule? Yes, I said. But bigger? He nodded again, accepting that answer as best he could. An officer returned and explained the next steps in simple terms. Reports would be filed. Child Protective Services would not be involved. We were clearly protecting him. The HOA would be contacted. Charges would be reviewed by the district attorney. None of it sounded dramatic. It sounded serious. That was somehow more reassuring. When the patrol car finally pulled away, there was no cheering, no applause, just quiet observation as it disappeared down the street. The neighbors lingered for a moment, then slowly began to disperse. Some came up to us. I'm so sorry, one woman said. He didn't do anything wrong, another added. We all saw it. I thanked them, though. My voice felt tired. Eventually, it was just us again. I helped my son up carefully. Do you want to go inside? I asked. Yes, he said quickly. Inside, the house felt like a shelter, the familiar smells, the soft lighting, the quiet hum of the refrigerator. My son went straight to the couch and curled up under his favorite blanket. His breathing gradually evened out. I sat beside him. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Later that evening, the phone rang. Then rang AIN, HOA representatives, a city official, an investigator. Each call was calm, professional, serious. Karen was suspended immediately, then removed. An emergency meeting was called. Statements were requested. Consequences stacking on top of consequences. My son slept through most of it. When he woke up, it was already dark outside. Dad? He asked softly. I'm here. She won't come back, right? No, I said firmly. She won't. He relaxed a little at that. The days that followed were quiet but heavy. The bruises faded slowly. The fear took longer. Sometimes he startled at loud voices on TV. Sometimes he asked if drawing on the driveway was still okay. Each time I reassured him, you didn't do anything wrong. The official notice arrived a few days later. Charges were filed. The HOA issued a public apology. Karen was barred from any position of authority in the neighborhood. None of it felt like victory. It felt like correction. Like the world, briefly, had done what it was supposed to do. One evening, as we sat together watching the sun dip below the trees, my son picked up a piece of chalk from the table. Dad, he said, can I draw again tomorrow? I smiled gently. Yes, I said. You can. He nodded, holding the chalk tightly, like it was something precious. And as I watched him, I understood something clearly. Consequences aren't about punishment. They were about drawing a line so clear that no one ever crosses it again. And this time, the line held. The house felt different that night. Not unfamiliar, just softer, like it was holding its breath with us, careful not to make any sudden noises. The lights were dim, the curtains were drawn halfway, letting in the last orange glow of the setting sun. Outside, the street had returned to its usual rhythm. A car passed now and then. Somewhere, a dog barked once and stopped. Inside, everything was calm. My son lay curled. On the couch, wrapped in his favorite blanket, the one with the worn edges he liked to rub between his fingers when he was tired. His body was finally still, not tense, not braced, just resting. I sat beside him, close enough that he could feel me there without being crowded. The doctor's words echoed in my head. He'll be sore, he'll be shaken, but he'll heal. I believed that. Still, I watched his breathing carefully. Slow, even, safe. Dad? He said softly after a while. Yes? Are we okay now? The question was small, but it carried everything. Yes, I said without hesitation. We're okay. He turned his head slightly, looking at me from beneath the blanket. She can't come back, right? No, I said, she can't. He nodded, the tension easing from his face in a way that told me he needed to hear it said out loud. Promises matter when fear has taken root. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then he asked, "Did I do something bad?" My chest tightened. "No," I said immediately. "You didn't do anything bad. Not even a little." "I broke a rule," he said quietly. "You didn't know the rule," I replied. "And even if you had, no rule ever means someone can hurt you." He thought about that for a long time. "Even if they're in charge?" he asked. "Especially then," I said. That answer seemed to settle something inside him. He closed his eyes again, his grip on the blanket loosening. Later, when he drifted into sleep, I stayed right where I was. I didn't move. I didn't check my phone. I didn't turn on the TV. I just listened to the steady rhythm of his breathing and let the quiet wrap around us. That night, sleep came slowly for me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of the driveway, the clipboard, the fear in his face. But each time, I also reminded myself of the end of the story, the part where it stopped, the part where adults stepped in, the part where my son was protected. Morning came gently. Sunlight filtered through the window, pale and soft. Birds returned to the tree outside, hopping from branch to branch. The world hadn't changed, but we had. My son woke up slowly. "Good morning," I said. He smiled faintly. "Good morning." He moved carefully, testing his arm, his back. He winced slightly but didn't panic. That alone felt like progress. "Hurts a little," he said. "I know," I replied. "We'll take it easy today." We ate breakfast at the table, unhurried. He pushed his cereal around more than he ate it, but that was okay. Healing doesn't rush. Later, he stood near the front window and looked out at the driveway. The chalk drawings were gone, washed away the night before by a light spray of water. The concrete was clean. "Empty, Dad?" he asked. "Yes? Can I draw again, someday?" The question wasn't really about chalk. It was about permission to feel safe again. "Yes," I said gently. "You can draw whenever you want." He considered that. "Maybe not today," he said. "That's okay," I replied. "There's no hurry." He nodded, satisfied with that answer. Over the next few days, things slowly returned to routine. School called to check on him. His teacher spoke softly, kindly, letting him know he could take breaks whenever he needed. Neighbors waved from a distance, respectful, subdued. No one asked invasive questions. No one pushed for details. The HOA sent a formal notice. Karen was permanently removed from her position. She was barred from representing the neighborhood in any capacity. New guidelines were issued, clear, written, unmistakable. No confrontations, no enforcement without authority, zero tolerance for intimidation. It wasn't just paperwork, it was acknowledgement. One afternoon, about a week later, my son came to me holding a piece of chalk, blue, his favorite color. "I think I'm ready," he said quietly. I walked with H.E.M. outside. The sun was warm again. The street was quiet. The driveway waited, blank and harmless. He sat down slowly and placed the chalk on the concrete. For a moment, he just held it. Then he drew a small circle, a sun, not big, not bold, just enough. I stayed nearby, watching, not interfering. Soon he began humming, the same tune, soft, steady. The sound filled the air like a promise. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear this time, but with relief, because this was what safety looked like. Not the absence of harm, but the return of joy. As he finished his drawing, he looked up at me. "Dad?" he said. "Yes? I'm not scared right now." I smiled. "That's the most important thing." And in that moment, I understood something deeply. Power doesn't belong to the loudest voice. Authority doesn't belong to the cruel. And rules don't matter more than people. What matters is this: a child feeling safe enough to hum again, and a parent making sure that safety is never taken away.